The altimeter spun wildly, its needle unraveling like a broken clock as Flight Lieutenant David Perry forced the control column forward from 31,000 feet. Only seconds earlier, his photo reconnaissance Mosquito had been cruising serenely above the Ruhr Valley, cameras methodically capturing images of Germany's industrial heartland. Then the radio crackled with the warning every PR crew feared. Bandits! 8 o'clock high. Two Focke-Wulf 190s burst from a cloud bank, radial engines roaring as they rolled into pursuit. Perry didn't need to look back. He already knew the arithmetic. The Mosquito, stripped of guns and armor to carry cameras instead of bombs, might hold a 10-mile-per-hour advantage on paper. Perhaps. The German fighters carried 4 20mm cannon and machine guns. Perry carried film, faith, and speed. One accurate burst would turn their wooden aircraft into drifting fragments over occupied Europe. Perry slammed the throttles through the gate. The twin Merlin engines screamed in protest as the airspeed needle crept past 370, then 380 miles per hour. Still not enough. Behind them, tracer rounds began stitching the sky. It was March 1943. RAF reconnaissance Mosquitoes were flying deeper into German airspace than ever before, gathering intelligence so valuable it reshaped bombing campaigns and naval strategy alike. But intelligence only mattered if it made it home. Dead crews delivered no photographs. The Fw-190s held altitude advantage and position. In a stern chase, physics favored the hunter. Their heavier airframes and superior dive performance meant they could close the distance relentlessly. Perry watched the black crosses grow larger in his mirror. Gentle evasive weaves only bled speed. The Mosquito was already at full combat power, engines running beyond limits that would demand rebuilds if they survived. The German pilots were disciplined and patient, closing steadily from above. Every Mosquito crew had heard the rumors. There was one escape. Dangerous, almost unthinkable. Instead of running level or climbing, you pointed the nose straight down and dove as if trying to reach the ground before the enemy reached you. You ignored every red line in the pilot's notes. You trusted the aircraft beyond reason. Some claimed the Mosquito could outdive anything in the Luftwaffe. Why, no one could fully explain. It required absolute faith in an aircraft made largely of plywood and balsa, materials that seemed absurdly fragile at such speeds. But Perry knew the design history, even if only by instinct. 3 years earlier at Hatfield, Geoffrey de Havilland's team had defied Air Ministry orthodoxy by building a modern combat aircraft almost entirely from wood. Not as a compromise, but as an advantage. The Mosquito's fuselage was a molded birch plywood shell, bonded with casein glue. Its wings combined spruce spars and plywood skins into a structure that was light, strong, and, critically, flexible. Where metal aircraft failed abruptly under stress, the Mosquito bent and absorbed punishment. That flexibility became its hidden strength. Its smooth wooden skin created less drag than riveted aluminum. At extreme speeds, microscopic turbulence mattered. The Mosquito slipped through the air with almost glass-like efficiency. Its forward center of gravity kept it balanced in steep dives, responsive where heavier bombers became uncontrollable. None of this was intentional. The Mosquito had been designed to outrun fighters at altitude, not plunge toward the Earth at unheard-of speeds. Test pilots had explored its limits cautiously, 420 miles per hour in level flight, perhaps 460 in shallow dives. Beyond that lay unanswered questions. But combat had a way of forcing answers. Repairs that would sideline metal aircraft for weeks could be accomplished with carpentry tools in days. More Mosquitoes stayed operational. More crews survived long enough to learn what the aircraft could endure. Perry understood something else as well. The Fw-190 was no ordinary opponent. Since its introduction in 1941, it had shattered RAF assumptions. Faster, more powerful, and heavily armed, it dominated the Spitfire MKV and excelled at high-altitude interception. By 1943, experienced Luftwaffe pilots guarded Germany's most vital targets, hunting Mosquitoes with practiced precision. Photo runs demanded straight and level flight, predictable, defenseless moments. Radar detected the intruders, fighters climbed above them, and then dove with stored energy. Standard evasive tactics worked against Bf-109s. Against the Fw-190, they only postponed destruction. Perry had seen the gun camera footage. Mosquitoes disintegrating mid-air. Wings folding. Fire blooming across wooden frames. What Perry also had, something few reconnaissance pilots possessed, was test pilot experience. At Boscombe Down, he had flown aircraft beyond their supposed limits and learned how conservative those limits often were. The Mosquito's published maximum dive speed was 415 miles per hour. He had exceeded it before. The aircraft had not failed. It had merely protested. Now, with tracers closing in, Perry made his decision. He pushed the nose down. The Mosquito began to accelerate into unknown territory. The controls grew heavy. The airframe started to tremble. And the wings flexed, alarmingly. The Mosquito shuddered, but it did not fail. The control column fought back, vibrating under Perry's grip, yet the airframe held together. More astonishing was the acceleration. In less than 20 seconds of near-vertical descent, the aircraft surged from 380 to over 440 miles per hour. Behind them, the Fw-190s were still diving, 5,000 feet higher and closing. Perry could see them clearly now. Wide radial noses, sharp wings, unmistakably predatory. Morris's voice cut through the intercom, tight and measured. "They're ranging us. 15 seconds." The choice was no choice at all. Straight and level flight meant death. Weaving might delay it by moments, nothing more. The Germans had position, altitude, and firepower. They would close, they would fire, and the Mosquito would not survive the first burst. Perry's test pilot instincts took over. The warning voice, "Don't point at the ground," was drowned out by calculation. The wings would flex before they failed. The wooden skin was cleaner than riveted metal at extreme speed. The light tail meant the aircraft would not pitch uncontrollably nose-heavy. "Hang on," Perry said. He forced the column forward with both hands. The nose dropped through the horizon like a released weight. The altimeter blurred, 30,000 feet, 28,000, numbers unwinding too fast to follow. The Merlin engine screamed as the propellers unloaded, spinning into the red. Perry pulled the throttles to idle. Gravity would do the rest. The airspeed needle passed 400 and kept climbing. The German pilots followed without hesitation. They rolled inverted and pulled through into the dive, trained and confident. By every expectation, they should have caught the Mosquito within seconds. Instead, the Mosquito pulled away. Acceleration built relentlessly. The aircraft vibrated, not violently, not destructively, but with a steady harmonic tremor. The wings were flexing, absorbing the load exactly as their laminated structure allowed. 430. 450. The control forces became immense, the stick heavy as air pressed against every surface. Morris said nothing. He watched the airspeed climb into regions that did not exist in any handbook. Then something impossible became undeniable. The Fw-190s were falling behind. Perry glanced in the mirror. The German fighters were still diving, still committed, but the distance between them was opening rapidly. At 20,000 feet, the Mosquito touched 470 miles per hour. The pursuers were now half a mile back, the gap widening every second. The physics were brutal and counterintuitive. Terminal velocity was not about weight alone. It was drag, and the Mosquito had almost none to spare. At extreme speeds, every rivet, every protrusion on the German fighters multiplied resistance. Their wide radial engines became walls of air. Shock waves formed around thick wing roots as compressibility effects took hold. The Mosquito's polished plywood skin sliced cleanly through it all. At 18,000 feet, the airspeed edged higher still. The wings bent visibly upward, flexing where metal would have snapped. The aircraft bucked against air that felt thick, almost solid. Control inputs became dangerously powerful. Perry fought the stick with aching arms, trim wound fully forward, each movement demanding enormous force. Behind them, The German pilots were encountering something their training had never prepared them for. Their aircraft shook violently. Controls stiffened. And the target ahead was disappearing. At 15,000 feet, Perry began the recovery. Gently, infinitesimally, he eased back on the column. The nose rose reluctantly. G-forces built fast. 2, 3, 4. The wings flexed downward now under the load. Morris's vision narrowed as gravity crushed him into the seat. The dive flattened out at 10,000 feet. Airspeed bled away. 400, 380, 350. Perry looked back. The sky was empty. The FW-190s had broken off somewhere above 12,000 feet, abandoning the chase to save fuel and altitude. They had been outrun, cleanly, decisively, by an aircraft made largely of wood and glue. The radio stayed silent. Perry advanced the throttles and began the long climb back to altitude. Only then did Morris speak. "We shouldn't be alive." Perry nodded. His hands were shaking now, the delayed cost of what they had survived. They had fallen from 31,000 feet to below 9,000 in under 4 minutes, reached speeds that would raise uncomfortable questions from the ground crew, and returned with intact film. 3 hours later at RAF Benson, Perry filed his report. Routine on the surface, but with an added appendix. He documented the dive, the speeds, the control forces, the wing behavior. He recorded the altitudes where the Mosquito had begun pulling away from the fighters. Most importantly, he recorded the result. A successful escape from a tactically superior enemy, by diving beyond every published limit. The report reached Wing Commander Robert Oakley of No. 544 Squadron on February 19, 1943. Oakley had lost 3 crews in 6 weeks. He read Perry's account carefully. It contradicted doctrine, instinct, and every assumption about wooden aircraft. But it also described something undeniable. A crew that should have died had come home. Oakley summoned Perry to his office. "Can you do it again?" he asked. Deliberately. Perry did not answer immediately. "Yes, sir," he said at last. "The aircraft has more tolerance than the manuals admit. The structure flexes instead of failing. But it only works if the pilot commits completely. You have to push through every instinct telling you not to." Within days, Oakley arranged demonstrations. On February 26, over the comparatively safe skies of Oxfordshire, Perry took other squadron pilots aloft in a training Mosquito. From 25,000 feet, he executed the dive, accelerating beyond 460 miles per hour before recovering at 8,000. Each observer felt the forces, watched the wings bend, and confronted the unsettling reality that the aircraft survived flight regimes that felt reckless. The maneuver gained an informal name almost immediately, the power dive, despite the throttles being pulled back. Others called it the mad dive, a nod to how violently it contradicted everything pilots were taught. Flight Lieutenant Robert Wilson, who first used it operationally on March 4, described it without ceremony. "You dive like you're trying to bury the aircraft in Germany. You accelerate until you're sure the wings will come off. Then you keep accelerating." That psychological barrier proved the hardest part. From Tiger Moth training onward, pilots were conditioned to respect limits. Never exceed speeds were not advisory, they were survival boundaries. Now squadron leaders were asking crews to deliberately violate them, trusting that the manuals were conservative and that survival lay beyond the red lines. Air Vice Marshal Donald Stevenson, overseeing reconnaissance operations at RAF Benson, initially refused to authorize formal training. His memorandum to Oakley on March 8 was clear. Doctrine could not be built on what appeared to be structural gambling. His caution was understandable. The Air Ministry's limits were the product of months of testing and analysis. One Mosquito breaking apart during a demonstration would end the concept instantly. But losses continued. Another aircraft fell to FW-190s on March 12. Another crew was lost on the 16th. Meanwhile, crews using the extreme dive were returning intact. Oakley responded with data, not theory. 5 successful evasions. Speeds approaching 490 miles per hour. No structural failures. 7 aircraft lost using conventional tactics in the same period. By March 22, Stevenson relented. Limited instruction was approved under the term high-speed emergency descent, with strict safeguards. Training above 10,000 feet. Gradual increases in speed. Immediate grounding for any abnormal vibration or damage. Perry became the de facto instructor. He developed a staged program. Initial dives to 430 miles per hour, recovery at high altitude. Then 450, exploring vibration characteristics. Only when a pilot demonstrated control discipline did Perry allow dives approaching 470 and beyond. The mental adjustment lagged behind the physical skill. Squadron leader Adrian Warburton aborted his first attempt at 435 miles per hour. His report was honest. "I knew the aircraft could do it. I didn't believe I could survive it." Within weeks, he did. By April, Warburton was using the technique operationally, escaping multiple FW-190s over keel. The effect was immediate and measurable. Loss rates plummeted. Number 544 Squadron's attrition dropped sharply. Number 540 Squadron flew deep missions without a single loss in April. Targets once considered prohibitive, Berlin, Leipzig, Dresden, were now attempted routinely. Crews volunteered, confident they possessed an escaped German fighters could not counter. The Luftwaffe noticed. German pilots began reporting Mosquitoes that simply vanished in dives that should not have been possible. Intelligence officers initially dismissed the claims. A wooden aircraft outperforming the FW-190 in a dive made no sense. Then doctrine changed. Interceptors were instructed to avoid diving attacks from above, instead engaging from level or below, an implicit admission that the British had found something effective. Enemy doctrine does not shift to counter fantasies. Mission planning evolved accordingly. Crews were briefed to dive immediately if intercepted above 20,000 feet. No weaving. No delay. Altitude became a stored escape resource. Navigation grew more complex as dives carried aircraft miles from their original track. Ground crews adapted to new wear patterns, increased inspections, and higher G-load stress cycles. By June 1943, the power dive was standard practice. The engineering explanation came only after the war. In July 1945, Jeffrey de Havilland Jr. conducted systematic high-speed dive tests. The results stunned the design team. The Mosquito exceeded 500 miles per hour without structural damage, nearly 100 miles per hour beyond published limits. Analysis revealed why theory had failed. Wooden monocoque construction distributed loads unpredictably but advantageously. Flexibility damped shock and delayed flutter. Unlike metal, the structure did not accumulate fatigue cracks. It flexed, then returned to shape. Wind tunnel testing confirmed what pilots had felt. At extreme speeds, the Mosquito's drag was dramatically lower than the FW-190s. In a dive, it would always accelerate faster. The published never exceed speed had included an enormous safety margin, nearly 40%, born from uncertainty about wooden structures. That caution had concealed an aircraft far stronger than its designers ever claimed. The lessons influenced post-war thinking. Engineers began reconsidering rigidity as strength, exploring controlled flexibility in high-speed aircraft. For the pilots, vindication was quieter. Perry read the declassified report years later and smiled. He had known the aircraft would hold. Felt it in the controls, in the way the wings bent and recovered, in the smooth acceleration that metal fighters could not match. The power dive became legend. The maneuver that turned hunters into spectators. The moment would prove superior to metal. And the reminder that, sometimes, survival is found beyond the limits written on the page.